Family and friends are going to gather to remember the 23-year-old woman, a young mother, who was killed in the shooting. It happened at a home off 22nd Avenue Southwest and Trotter Road in unincorporated Largo at around 1:45 Saturday afternoon. 10 Tampa Bay's Angelina Salcido is live at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
And Angie, you spoke to family not long ago.
Yeah, it has been a very tough Christmas Eve and Christmas for this family, now grieving the loss of this 23-year-old mother of two who deputies say was shot and killed by her own 14-year-old brother. I want you to take a look at who we're talking about here. This is Abrielle Baldwin and her two sons. You can see them in the photo there. 6-year-old Jamari and Amir, who is just 11 months old. Her sister gave me this photo after we spoke moments ago. She says their family is heartbroken about her loss in this entire situation as they plan her funeral right before the new year. Abrielle was killed Christmas Eve in a shooting here at her grandmother's home in Largo after deputies say a fight broke out between her 14 and 15-year-old brothers earlier in the day. Investigators say that fight was reportedly over how many Christmas gifts each brother was getting while the family was shopping.
On December 24th, 2023, a family outing in Largo, Pinellas County, Florida ended in tragedy when a routine holiday gathering escalated into lethal violence. Authorities responded to a residential address shortly after an argument erupted following Christmas shopping involving Abrielle Baldwin, age 23, and her teenage brothers, Damarcus Coley, 14, and Darcus Coley, 15. What began as a dispute over holiday gifts escalated rapidly, culminating in the fatal shooting of Baldwin while she was attempting to mediate between her brothers. Both teenagers were subsequently injured in separate gunfire incidents. Initial reports indicate that multiple firearms were involved and that warning signs of escalating conflict may have been overlooked by family members and authorities alike. Law enforcement has filed charges against both brothers, but the full circumstances, including how the firearm became accessible and what prompted the confrontation to turn deadly, remain under investigation. Authorities continue to examine the factors that led to this preventable tragedy.
You got the 14-year-old who's mad at the 15-year-old because mom's not buying equal amounts of gifts.
Fight escalated once the family got to their grandmother's house in Largo.
He takes out his gun and tells him he's going to shoot him in the head.
When Abrielle stepped in, she was shot in the chest by her 14-year-old brother with his .40 caliber semi-automatic gun.
What she said was, knock it off. Leave it alone. Why are you doing this? It's Christmas.
Seconds later, deputies say his 15-year-old brother came outside and shot his brother.
Shot one time in the stomach.
We are not naming the teen brothers in this case because of their ages. The 14-year-old still in the hospital tonight after undergoing surgery. He is recovering, charged with first-degree murder. Those charges could later be upgraded. His brother is in a mental health facility getting treatment after threatening to take his own life. He's charged with attempted first-degree murder. A tough loss for this family to process all three siblings gone right around the holidays. In Largo tonight, Angelina Salcido, 10 Tampa Bay.
Deputies are still trying to recover a .45 caliber semi-automatic gun. They're also working to figure out if both guns used here were stolen and possibly used in other crimes in our area.
Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin.
Good morning, beautiful. Just want to let you know I've been thinking about you all night last night. I had such a... Bitch, wake up. You ain't sleep, ho.
Abrielle Baldwin was 23 years old at the time of her death. She was the oldest sibling in her household and occupied a central role within her family structure. As the eldest child, she often functioned as a bridge between generations, navigating responsibilities that extended beyond her age. Her position placed her between her mother and her younger brothers, both of whom were still minors. Abrielle was also a mother. She had two young sons, one of whom was an infant less than a year old. The infant was physically present with her at the time of the shooting. Her role as a parent significantly shaped her daily responsibilities and routines. Much of her time was dedicated to caregiving, supervision, and maintaining stability for her children, while remaining actively involved in her extended household. Prior to the incident, Abrielle's daily life reflected overlapping responsibilities. She balanced employment with childcare and family obligations. While specific details of her job history were not widely publicized, available information indicates that she contributed financially and logistically to the household. Her routine involved assisting her mother, supporting her siblings, and managing the needs of her children.
Why do you keep on saying tomorrow?
Because tomorrow is when it's gonna happen.
Tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Tomorrow.
These overlapping roles placed her in frequent proximity to family conflict and decision-making. Her relationship with her mother appeared structured around cooperation and shared responsibility. Abrielle often assisted with household management and childcare. With her siblings, particularly her younger brothers, she maintained a role that combined authority with familiarity. She was neither a parent nor a peer, which positioned her uniquely during moments of tension. Within family dynamics, Abrielle was frequently described as a mediator. When disagreements arose, she attempted to calm situations and redirect conversations. Her approach involved verbal intervention rather than physical confrontation. This role was consistent with her position as the eldest sibling and a parent herself. On the day of the incident, she again attempted to de-escalate a conflict, consistent with her established behavior patterns. Regarding her personal history, Abrielle had completed formal education and maintained ties within her local community. She had established relationships beyond her immediate household, including friends, co-workers, and extended family members. Like many young adults, she managed multiple responsibilities simultaneously, including parenting, financial obligations, and family involvement. These responsibilities often required her to place herself in situations where conflict resolution became part of her routine role. The household included Abrielle Baldwin, her mother, her two teenage brothers aged 14 and 15, and Abrielle's children. This multi-generational living arrangement created overlapping authority roles. While the mother held formal parental authority, Abrielle frequently exercised situational authority due to her age, maturity, and responsibilities. Power dynamics within the home were not strictly hierarchical. The teenage brothers were subject to adult supervision, yet there were indications of challenges in enforcement and compliance. Behavioral concerns involving the younger family members had been noted prior to the incident. These concerns included discipline issues and difficulties with emotional regulation. Tension between siblings was not uncommon. Conflicts reportedly arose over perceived fairness, privileges, and material items. These disputes sometimes escalated beyond verbal disagreement. The household environment required frequent intervention by adults or older family members to manage disputes. The role of adults in conflict management was central but inconsistent. While efforts were made to maintain order, there were limitations in controlling behavior, particularly as the teenage brothers grew older. The presence of firearms within the broader environment added a significant risk factor, though the extent of adult awareness regarding access remains a critical issue in the investigation. Abrielle's position placed her in frequent proximity to these tensions. Her attempts to intervene were informal and based on personal authority, rather than enforcement mechanisms. This dynamic created situations where she was exposed to escalating conflicts without formal means to ensure compliance or safety. The 14-year-old brother was identified by investigators as the individual who fired a fatal shot that killed Abrielle Baldwin. Prior to the incident, he had a documented behavioral history that included incidents of aggression. Records indicated previous encounters with school authorities and law enforcement related to conduct issues. These incidents suggested ongoing challenges with emotional regulation and impulse control. His responses to perceived provocation were often disproportionate, escalating quickly from verbal disagreement to threats. Concerns have been raised regarding his behavior before the shooting, though the effectiveness of interventions remains under review. Despite being a minor, he had access to a firearm. Investigators later examined how this access occurred, including whether the weapon was stolen, improperly stored, or otherwise obtained unlawfully, the presence of firearm in the hands of a minor became a central focus of the case. The 15-year-old brother was also involved in the argument that preceded the shooting. Initially, he was engaged in a dispute over Christmas gifts alongside his younger brother. Following the fatal shooting of Abrielle, he retrieved a firearm and shot the 14-year-old. After the incident, the 15-year-old displayed signs of psychological distress. Statements made following the event indicated mental health concerns, including expressions consistent with emotional instability and potential self-harm ideation. He was placed under observation before being formally processed through the juvenile justice system. Legally, he faced charges related to the shooting of his brother, as well as allegations of evidence tampering. His actions expand the scope of the investigation, transforming the case into one involving multiple shooters and victims within the same family unit.
New details on a fight between siblings that turned deadly on Christmas Eve. Investigators say shockingly began as an argument over who got more presents. This is Nightside. I'm Carolina Lead. Dave has the night off. In a story you'll see only on 10 Tampa Bay, tonight family members are speaking out for the first time about how this all went down. 10 Tampa Bay's Angelina Salcido spoke with them just a few hours ago.
Carolina, this family is going through an extremely tough time right now after losing a 23-year-old mom of two just a day before Christmas. Hours ago, they honored her life about a mile from here with a candlelight vigil. That's where I spoke to her mom off camera. She tells me that she was there when the shooting happened and is just trying to process all of this. But tonight, this family wants Abrielle Baldwin to know that she is loved and her kids are taken care of. The pain is unbearable. Candles illuminate photos of 23-year-old Abrielle Baldwin and her two babies. They're now left without a mom.
They're going to get taken care of regardless.
Ariana Birch is Abrielle's younger sister.
She was a really sweet person. She was just special.
The 21-year-old comforted by the love Bree's family and friends are showing tonight, but she's heartbroken.
She didn't know people cared about her. She thought nobody didn't care about her.
She lost not one, but three siblings.
I feel like everything is destroyed and taken from me.
Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gualtieri says an argument between her two teen brothers turned violent on Christmas Eve.
You got the 14-year-old who's mad at the 15-year-old because mom's not buying equal amounts of gifts.
Fight escalated once the family got to their grandmother's house in Largo.
He takes out his gun and tells him he's going to shoot him in the head.
When Abrielle stepped in, she was shot in the chest by her 14-year-old brother with his .40 caliber semi-automatic gun.
What she said was, knock it off. Leave it alone. Why are you doing this? It's Christmas.
Seconds later, deputies say his 15-year-old brother came outside and shot his brother.
Shot one time in the stomach.
We are not naming the teen brothers in this case because of their ages. The 14-year-old still in the hospital tonight after undergoing surgery. He is recovering, charged with first-degree murder. Those charges could later be upgraded. His brother is in a mental health facility getting treatment after threatening to take his own life. He's charged with attempted first-degree murder. A tough loss for this family to process all three siblings gone right around the holidays. In Largo tonight, Angelina Salcido, 10 Tampa Bay.
Deputies are still trying to recover a .45 caliber semi-automatic gun. They're also working to figure out if both guns used here were stolen and possibly used in other crimes in our area.
On December 24th, 2023, the family participated in a Christmas Eve outing that included holiday shopping. The group consisted of the mother, Abrielle, her two teenage brothers, and her children. During the outing, tension developed between the brothers regarding Christmas gifts. The argument centered on perceptions of unfairness. Disagreements arose over who received more or better items. These disputes were verbal but persistent. As the outing continued, the disagreement intensified rather than dissipated. Family members attempted to intervene verbally. Abrielle made efforts to calm the situation and redirect attention away from the dispute. Despite these attempts, resentment continued to build. The argument was not resolved before the family moved locations. After shopping, the group traveled to a relative's home. The change in environment did not de-escalate the situation. Instead, the argument resumed inside the residence. Verbal exchanges intensified, and threats were reportedly made. At this stage, Escalation indicators were present. Raised voices, confrontational language, and refusal to disengage characterized the interaction. Attempts by family members to intervene did not succeed in stopping the progression of the conflict. These unresolved tensions culminated in the introduction of a firearm and the subsequent shooting. On the evening of December 24th, 2023, the Baldwin family was inside a residence in Largo, Florida, following a day that included a shared holiday shopping trip. Multiple family members were present, including Abrielle Baldwin, her 2 young children, her mother, and her 2 teenage brothers, ages 14 and 15. An argument that began earlier in the day continued into the evening, centered on a disagreement between the 2 brothers regarding Christmas gifts. According to investigators, the dispute involved complaints about fairness, perceived favoritism, and dissatisfaction with what had been purchased. As the argument progressed, verbal exchanges between the brothers became louder and more confrontational. Witnesses later reported that the conversation shifted from complaints to insults and threats. The disagreement was no longer limited to the subject of gifts and began to reflect broader tensions between the siblings. Other family members attempted to intervene, including Abrielle Baldwin, who stepped between the 2 teenagers in an effort to stop the argument from escalating further. Abrielle addressed both brothers directly and instructed them to stop arguing. She referenced the holiday and attempted to redirect the situation away from confrontation. Despite these efforts, the argument intensified rather than subsided. The 14-year-old brother continued to argue with his older sibling, and the volume and intensity of the exchange increased. At this point, the situation shifted from a verbal dispute to a physical threat. During the argument, the 14-year-old brother retrieved a firearm. Investigators later confirmed that the weapon was a handgun and that he was in possession of it during the confrontation. Witnesses reported that the firearm was displayed openly and that verbal threats were made. The presence of the weapon significantly altered the dynamics inside the residence. Family members attempted to distance themselves from the immediate area, while others verbally urged the teenager to put the gun away. Abrielle Baldwin was holding her infant child at the time. She positioned herself between the armed teenager and other family members. Investigators noted that she continued to speak to him, telling him to stop and attempting to de-escalate the situation. Despite these efforts, the 14-year-old did not lower the weapon. According to law enforcement, the teenager made additional threats while holding the gun. Moments later, the 14-year-old discharged the firearm. The bullet struck Abrielle Baldwin in the chest. She was still holding her infant at the time of the shooting. The force of the gunshot caused her to collapse, and the infant fell from the carrier onto the floor. Investigators later confirmed that the child did not sustain gunshot injuries and was physically unharmed. The shooting caused immediate disorder inside the residence. Family members began shouting, and several individuals moved toward Abrielle to assess her condition. Others attempted to secure the infant and move him away from the area. Blood was visible at the scene, and the firearm remained present during the initial moments following the shooting. After Abrielle was shot, the situation continued to escalate rather than stabilize. The 15-year-old brother reacted to the shooting by leaving the immediate area. According to investigators, he retrieved a second firearm. Law enforcement later determined that he returned with the weapon shortly after the first shooting occurred. At this point, the residence contained multiple firearms, injured individuals, and multiple witnesses. The environment was described by deputies as chaotic, with conflicting movements and verbal exchanges taking place simultaneously. Family members later told investigators that they were unsure who was armed and feared additional gunfire. The 15-year-old brother confronted the 14-year-old brother after retrieving the firearm. According to the investigation, the confrontation was brief. The 15-year-old discharged his weapon, striking the 14-year-old brother in the abdomen. The second shooting occurred inside the same residence, only moments after Abrielle Baldwin had been shot. The 14-year-old sustained serious injuries but remained alive. Family members immediately attempted to provide aid, while others called for emergency assistance. The second firearm was later recovered by law enforcement. Following the shootings, multiple 911 calls were placed from the residence. Callers reported that a woman had been shot and that a teenager had also been shot. Dispatch records indicate that deputies were informed of an active shooting scene involving minors and firearms. Pinellas County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the location shortly after receiving the calls. Upon entry, they observed Abrielle Baldwin unresponsive with a gunshot wound to the chest. The 14-year-old male was also located with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. The infant was found nearby and was not injured. Deputies secured the scene to ensure there were no additional threats. Firearms were located and removed from the immediate area. Emergency medical services arrived shortly afterward and began treatment. Abrielle Baldwin was transported to a nearby hospital. Despite medical intervention, she was pronounced dead from her injuries. The 14-year-old brother was also transported to the hospital for emergency treatment. His injuries were classified as serious but non-fatal. The infant was examined at the scene and later transported for medical evaluation as a precaution. No physical injuries were reported. Once all victims were transported, deputies secured the residence as a crime scene. Firearms were documented, photographed, and collected as evidence. Shell casings and other ballistic evidence were recovered from the scene. Investigators conducted initial interviews with family members who were present during the incident. These interviews focused on the sequence of events, the nature of the argument, and the actions of each individual involved. Neighbors were also interviewed to determine whether any external witnesses heard gunshots or observed activity outside the residence. Detectives reconstructed the timeline using witness statements, 911 call data, and physical evidence. This included determining when the argument began, when each firearm was introduced, and the order in which shots were fired. Ballistics analysis was conducted to match recovered shell casings to the firearms found at the scene. Investigators also examined how the firearms were obtained. Law enforcement focused on storage practices, access points, and whether the weapons had been reported stolen. The presence of multiple firearms in the possession of minors became a central focus of the investigation. As part of the case review, authorities examined prior warning signs. This included reviewing school disciplinary records and any previous involvement with the juvenile justice system. Investigators sought to determine whether earlier interventions had occurred and whether there were documented behavioral concerns that might have indicated a risk of violent escalation. The investigation continued with coordination between detectives, prosecutors, and juvenile justice officials to determine appropriate charges and legal proceedings. Following the tragic events of December 24th, 2023, law enforcement and the local district attorney's office moved quickly to file charges against the two teenage brothers involved. The younger of the two, a 14-year-old, faced multiple serious charges. He was formally charged with first-degree murder in connection with the death of Abrielle Baldwin. In addition to the murder charge, he was charged with child abuse due to the fact that the incident occurred while an 11-month-old infant was present. Authorities also charged him with illegal possession of a firearm, citing that, as a minor, he was prohibited from having access to firearms under state law. The older brother, age 15, was charged separately. His charges included attempted first-degree murder for shooting his younger brother during the altercation. He was also charged with tampering with evidence, as investigators determined attempts were made to conceal or modify elements of the crime scene. The legal system faced the complex task of determining how to proceed with both teenagers, particularly in weighing the juvenile versus adult court considerations. For the 14-year-old, the court evaluated whether the severity of the charges warranted transferring the case to adult court. Factors included his age, prior behavioral history, the violent nature of the incident, and the presence of premeditation or intent. The 15-year-old's case also raised questions about whether he would remain within the juvenile system or face adult charges due to the seriousness of his actions. Mental health evaluations were ordered for both individuals. These assessments aimed to establish their psychological state at the time of the incident, their capacity to understand the consequences of their actions, and any underlying behavioral or cognitive issues that may have contributed to the escalation. Evaluators also examined whether either teenager posed a continued risk to themselves or others. As the court process progressed, multiple hearings addressed procedural issues, motions, and the presentation of evidence. Both teenagers' defense teams prepared arguments regarding their client's mental state, age, and circumstances leading to the incident. Prosecutors sought to demonstrate intent and accountability, referencing witness statements, forensic evidence, and the sequence of events leading to the shootings. Potential sentencing outcomes varied based on whether the cases remained in juvenile court or were transferred to adult court. In juvenile court, penalties typically focus on rehabilitation and supervision, whereas adult court could result in long-term incarceration if convictions are secured. The immediate concern following the shooting involved the care of Abrielle Baldwin's 2 children. In the immediate aftermath, authorities and social services intervened to determine temporary custody arrangements. Decisions were made to ensure the safety and stability of both the 6-year-old child and the 11-month-old infant. These immediate arrangements prioritized placement with family members deemed capable of providing a secure environment while investigations continued. Long-term guardianship considerations remained under evaluation as the family navigated legal, emotional, and logistical challenges. Courts had to determine whether the children would remain with extended family members, be placed in foster care, or under other protective arrangements. Decisions required careful review of the children's best interests, including maintaining continuity of care, education, and emotional support. Psychological impacts were also a significant concern. Exposure to a violent incident, particularly involving the death of a parent in presence of firearms, has known developmental and emotional consequences. Authorities and child psychologists work to assess potential trauma, including signs of anxiety, withdrawal, or other behavioral changes. Counseling and therapeutic interventions were likely considered to address both immediate and long-term mental health needs. Financial and practical implications also influenced the family situation. The loss of Abrielle Baldwin's income and caregiving role created economic pressures for surviving family members responsible for the children's care. This included costs associated with housing, medical care, counseling services, and general day-to-day needs. Legal fees and court-related expenses added further strain, highlighting the broader consequences of the incident beyond the immediate act of violence. The shooting generated a rapid and visible response from both the local community and the broader public. Community members organized vigils and memorial events to mark the death of Abrielle Baldwin. These gatherings were attended by neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, serving as public acknowledgement of the tragedy and as a platform for collective reflection. Public statements from local officials emphasized the seriousness of the crime and the ongoing investigation, while urging families to seek help in conflict resolution and the responsible storage of firearms. Family responses were limited publicly, with immediate statements largely managed through official channels or legal representatives. The family's silence reflected a combination of grief, legal constraints, and the sensitive nature of the ongoing investigation. Media outlets cover both the crime and its aftermath extensively, highlighting the tragic circumstances and the involvement of minors in lethal violence. The coverage included interviews with neighbors, law enforcement officials, and legal experts analyzing potential outcomes and the broader implications for youth violence. The incident also prompted scrutiny and discussions within the community regarding gun access for minors, the role of parental supervision, and the capacity of the juvenile justice system to respond effectively to violent behavior. Law enforcement and social service agencies reviewed existing protocols for intervention, aiming to prevent similar incidents in the future. These discussions often considered mental health resources, family conflict resolution strategies, and educational programs designed to identify at-risk youth. Media coverage further amplified the public's attention on both the perpetrators and the surviving family. The combination of social media posts, news articles, and broadcast segments created a detailed record of the events, while simultaneously raising questions about privacy, responsible reporting, and the influence of public scrutiny on the judicial process. In the months following the incident, monitoring of the case continued, including updates on court proceedings, mental health assessments, and custody arrangements. The community's engagement through vigils and organized discussions reflected ongoing concern for children and an interest in ensuring accountability and systemic improvements. The events surrounding the fatal shooting of Abrielle Baldwin illuminate systemic issues that extend beyond a single family. One of the most immediate concerns is youth access to firearms. Both teenage brothers were able to obtain and use guns during an argument that escalated rapidly. The circumstances indicate that firearms were within reach of minors in the household. This access raises questions about storage practices, supervision, and regulatory compliance, reflecting a gap in safety measures that is not uncommon in domestic settings. The case demonstrates how easily a conflict can become lethal when firearms are present, emphasizing the importance of secure storage and preventative measures in households with minors. Another critical consideration is the failure points within juvenile intervention systems. Law enforcement and community agencies had prior knowledge of at least one of the brothers' behavioral issues, yet interventions were insufficient to prevent escalation. This points to shortcomings in monitoring, mental health support, and guidance systems intended to mitigate risk among adolescents with a history of aggression. The inability to redirect or manage high-risk behavior illustrates the limitations of current juvenile supervision frameworks and highlights the need for reform. The case also exposes patterns in family conflict escalation during holidays. The fatal incident occurred on Christmas Eve, a period characterized by heightened social expectations, stress, and financial or emotional pressure. Arguments that may have been minor at other times of the year intensified due to the holiday context. Abrielle Baldwin, acting as an intermediary and caretaker, attempted to mediate between her brothers and calm the situation. The escalation into physical violence underscores how unresolved family tensions can become magnified in high-stress situations, particularly when adequate supervision or conflict resolution strategies are not in place. Closely linked to these dynamics is the role of stress, discipline, and supervision in adolescent behavior management. The combination of ongoing family tension, holiday-related stress, and limited oversight created conditions where an argument rapidly transitioned to lethal action. The case demonstrates the interplay between environmental stressors and behavioral impulses, highlighting the necessity of consistent discipline structures and active adult supervision in households with vulnerable minors. Despite substantial documentation of events, multiple questions remain unresolved. Foremost among these is whether intervention could have occurred earlier. Evidence suggests that warning signs, including prior behavioral issues and minor disputes, may not have received adequate attention from family members, educators, or community agencies. Determining whether earlier action could have altered the outcome is essential for understanding systemic shortcomings and developing preventive strategies. Another unresolved aspect is the question of firearm accessibility within the household. How the teenagers obtained the guns remains a critical point of investigation. Factors such as unsecured storage, lack of parental awareness, or illegal possession could all have contributed to the incident. Clarifying the mechanisms through which the minors access lethal weapons is central to assessing risk and proposing policy adjustments to prevent similar occurrences. The case also raises the issue of dismissed or overlooked warning signs. Behavioral indicators, disputes, or previous altercations may have suggested a risk for escalation, yet these signals were not acted upon effectively. Understanding why these signs were ignored or underestimated is necessary for improving community and institutional responses to high-risk situations involving youth. Finally, broader systemic questions emerge regarding which structures fail the family. From law enforcement to juvenile services and community oversight, multiple entities intersect with families in crisis. This case exposes potential gaps in communication, monitoring, and intervention, providing a framework for examining systemic weaknesses that allow preventable tragedies to occur. At present, the legal standing of both brothers continues to evolve. The 14-year-old is charged with first-degree murder, child abuse, and delinquent possession of a firearm. The 15-year-old faces charges including attempted first-degree murder and tampering with evidence, with considerations for mental health evaluations and juvenile facility placement. Court proceedings remain ongoing, with several hearings and legal motions pending. Decisions on whether the minors will face adult prosecution or remain within juvenile jurisdiction will have long-term implications for their rehabilitation and accountability. These developments intersect with broader juvenile justice reform discussions. The case exemplifies the challenges of balancing accountability, rehabilitation, and protection for minors within the legal system. Pending rulings may set precedents for how juvenile offenders involved in lethal incidents are treated, influencing future policy and intervention strategies. The chain of events in the Abrielle Baldwin case can be summarized without conjecture. On December 24th, 2023, a family argument following holiday shopping escalated between two teenage brothers. During the confrontation, one brother discharged a firearm, resulting in the death of Abrielle Baldwin. A subsequent shooting by the other brother caused injury, but no additional fatalities. Law enforcement responded quickly, arrests were made, and charges filed. Investigations continue to clarify details regarding firearm access, behavioral history, and intervention opportunities. This case should be framed as a convergence of preventable failures. It combines the accessibility of lethal weapons, gaps in juvenile supervision, stress-induced family conflict, and missed behavioral warnings. Each factor individually poses risk, but collectively they created conditions for a fatal outcome. By presenting the incident in this manner, the story functions as a cautionary example for families, communities, and policymakers. Preventive measures, proactive supervision, and structured interventions are critical in preventing domestic tragedies, particularly those involving minors and firearms. The case further emphasizes the importance of systemic examination. Beyond the immediate family, law enforcement, juvenile services, and social systems all intersected with the circumstances leading to the fatal shooting. Evaluating these intersections can identify weaknesses in oversight and intervention, informing strategies that may reduce risk for other families in similar situations. Ultimately, the Abrielle Baldwin case is not only a narrative of one family tragedy, but also a study in risk factors, oversight deficiencies, and social dynamics that can escalate seemingly minor conflicts into lethal events. It reinforces a need for vigilance regarding firearm access, adolescent behavior management, and holiday period stress mitigation, while highlighting the critical role of systemic intervention and responsible supervision. The lessons extracted from this incident hold relevance for communities, policymakers, and families aiming to prevent comparable tragedies. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.